Good evening. It is Wednesday. I actually know what day of the week it is today. One of the things that oh, come on, Rory. Come on. There you go, little man. So, I've had a pretty good day today. But, you gotta go ready. Ugh. I need to seek forgiveness as I start. I am a zombie this evening. I am really tired. But I tried to wait as long as I could to have a bit of a nap, and I had a bit of a nap, and I'm still tired. So, clearly that's not going to fix it. I need to go to bed. So, let's do the thing. Yeah. We made good progress yesterday. We really, really did. I was very pleased with myself. Considering we were only online for a little bit, we really didn't do too badly. But today is another day, and I do not expect to be on too long. Now, kicked my table. It's kind of not in a good spot. There we are. Right, so, what am I doing? I am doing cloth stitch over there. Tangled things. You need to go over here. And you can come over here. And you need to come over here. Oops. You nearly all fell out there. That would have been a bit annoying. I'm kind of looking forward to going back to the other bobbins, because much as I really love these bobbins, and they do take a lot less space on the pillow, and they're weighted, they are weighty, not that they are weighted, but that they have presence, let's put it that way. The sliding in the sticks is really annoying. So we're in the position that we will be looking to fix that. So we don't need some of you yet, but we will very shortly. So let's be doing this then. So now. Let's quickly check that these aren't twisted. They're not. That's a good thing. We need some pens. And then she realises, of course, you're supposed to be stealing them from up here, you stupid woman. Right. Well, technically not, as we're in the cloth stitch stage, but, Yeah, I am proper tired today. This is feeling hard work. Right. Do not be fighting. You, young lady, need to stop destroying the couch. Awesome. We like that. We like that in Dot. I'm really struggling today, though. It's almost like I've got flu, but I haven't got the flu yet. So I feel really drained, really heavy, really tired, really awkward, really just run down, lethargic. No, actually, I had a really good day. But for some reason, I am absolutely beat. Um, I've had a really good laugh today. It's been one of the best days for a long time. Um, Without giving too much away of the reasons why, um, my ex-husband, I had a conversation with my ex-husband yesterday about the gaps and pins following a website, and he agreed with me that that's how the website read, but then that didn't make any sense. That would be, it was kind of confusing. And I am good at finding ambiguousness in what looks like a clear instruction or was originally thought to be a clear instruction, but I see choices. And so, I was talking to him about it, and although he's bad at maths, he did agree that, if you have two equal sides to a triangle, the hypotenuse is bigger than the length of the side. Therefore, depending on which pin of those three you were talking about the distance, if it's the distance between down the hypotenuse, it's going to give you a different than... Anyway. And I mentioned to him that my phone said that this morning there would be heavy snow. And he laughed and he went, "Oh, don't be so wet," kind of thing, right? Well, I woke up this morning and the snow was falling out the sky in large flakes. And I took a photo to kind of go, see, I didn't need to. Already in my mailbox was a, "Sorry, I was wrong about the snow." And I laughed for nearly an hour on that one because it's rare. It's a rare, rare thing that he's one of those people that he can be wrong. And he's not a particularly sore loser when he's wrong. He really isn't. But he's not usually the first to come up with, "Sorry, I was wrong." He usually has to have it slightly dragged out of him. So the fact that he volunteered it made me laugh. It just made me laugh. I was then reading something on the Unity forums, and some guy on there wrote something really dumb, and I laughed at it. And I laughed for about another hour. So I've already laughed for like 2 hours, and I was barely out of bed for 2 hours. It was a good day. Anyway, just before I logged out of work this afternoon, my co-worker said, "Have you seen this ticket?" No. I'm about to go home. I haven't looked at the tickets for like 20 minutes. I was in the middle of something else, so no, I haven't looked at the ticket. "Oh, so-and-so tried to do something and has completely broken their machine." Well, that was laugh number 3. Because what they did was real stupid and something they weren't really supposed to be doing. And well, it didn't go very well for them. And what a shame. And, so from that point of view, I've had a cracking day. I've had many things to amuse me. The dogs have not done anything spectacularly bad. You may recall the other day I ordered me some linen thread, which was this. I also got a blue one to go with it. The blue looks a little duller on camera, but it is a turquoise. It's not quite as electric as I hoped, but it is a interesting kind of green. There, that looks a little bit more true to life, bar the shine of the plastic bag on it. So, I've been thinking about how to do my test strips. I've been thinking about, how big is big enough? Because obviously, with lace making, as you're aware, as it's not the speediest of hobbies, the more bobbins there are, the more anxiety there is. The more anxiety there is, the more mistakes you make, and all of those kind of moments. But I don't really want to make a strip that takes 2 weeks to make when I need maybe 6 or 7 of the wretched things as my experiment. But at the same time, I need to make it big enough, because if it's too small, it's not going to serve purpose. The idea of said purpose is that the question of, is it possible for Liz, not possible in general, but possible for me, Liz, to make a one-piece looking curtain? Now, in days of yore, there were pretty joins and people specialised in them. And now, in 2025, the people who know how to do it are gatekeeping the subject. So, I have some ideas in my mind. I am pretty sure one of them's a big pile of doo-doo. Because, well, it just is, frankly. It's... Because, well, think about it this way. I explained this on stream yesterday. Ignoring the fact that these are squares and so have a straight line, imagine these are zigzag lines, and you line them up, and you then sew over the top. Well, you've got a whole kind of maybe square of zigzags that will be double the number of threads. Then, on top of that, just in case that was not enough, you add another one to hold them together. So instead of 2 threads, you've now got 5. Well, I can't imagine that not showing. Really can't. So even if you kind of gently oversew it and you haven't strangled it to death, as some suggest by doing like half-hitch knots all the way down between the pins kind of thing, even if you just kind of wrap it around once so that it's kind of in the style of what you're doing, that's got to show. That's so got to show. It's going to be a thick bit. And now, there are a number of lace types where they use that style of join. And in fact, there's a guy who's been practicing it on the beginner lace bobbin thing on Facebook. And he is a very talented individual. We're not, it's definitely not a knock on his skills. But where you join it, to me, stands out a mile. Now, we're all used to joins on clothing and all that kind of stuff. So, depending on where and what it is, joins are not exactly forbidden. But if you're trying to make, like, the Chantilly lace shawls, you do not want blatant stripes down it. I mean, you could do something with maybe almost the equivalent of lace applique to cover some of it and distract from it, perhaps. But even so. So I find myself in a conundrum. Now, I've come up with a couple of potential ways that this could work. That there is hope for it and all that kind of stuff. But of course, I need to try it to see if it works as well in reality as it should do, as it does in my head. But if it's going to take me a couple of weeks to strip, and of course the strip needs to be reasonably long so that it's not a 2-stitch miracle. You have to be able to maintain it over a distance, because of course the net curtain's going to be, best part of nearly a metre long. No point being able to only do it if it's an inch long and it all goes to pot. So it's got to be a reasonable length. It's also got to be a reasonable width so that you can have the various joins across and see which ones you decide are better or worse or. But you also need to practice handling items bigger than you'd like. Because obviously if you're joining 1 metre strip to another 1 metre strip, it's not the same as joining two 2-inch strips together. Because, for example, I could pin two 2-inch strips on this and do some work in the middle. Piece of cake. But what are you going to do when there's another metre of it hanging around in a roll and getting on your nerves? Well, then you've got another problem now, haven't you? Yes. Well, it is. But, I mean, it's a bit like Kitchener Stitch, though. Kitchener Stitch, no matter how hard you try, realistically, the start always looks a bit dubious, the end always looks a bit dubious, the bit in the middle, you can usually work out and get into a swing. It's the start and the end that you usually screw up. Now, in effect, Kitchener Stitch is actually one of the inspirations of one of the things I want to try. But as you say, it's a bit easier with crochet because you can do a couple of joins. You join, take, say, square A and square B and go, joiny, joiny, join. It takes you like 10 minutes to do the join and you go, yuck, and frog it and try something else. Lace making, that's kind of not the case. For first of all, it was not 10 minutes. Secondly, yes, technically you can frog it. Because you can, as long as you haven't chopped it off. Yes, technically, or not in it, you can indeed. Practically, not so much. Painstakingly painful. So you have to practice. And much like my efforts with picots, we all know that the picots did not go so well. For some reason, I am really shit at picots. Unfortunately, one of the ideas involves picots. So, let me run by the idea of the work. Now, as you may be aware, the ground stitch kind of makes a zigzag like this. And the two zigzags like this go out, make a square, come back in, go out, make a square, come back in, right? Well, what I would do is on the edge of each... Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. We see, the thing I hate about the lace making ones is they just look like fucked up pinholes. They just look like you got it wrong. They don't look pretty. They look like mistakes. I mean, this is my last piece. It enjoys being screwed up, by the way. It naturally twists that way. But I tried to practice picots. Now, more of these picots were successful-ish compared to my original picot effort, so maybe I did do better. But if I zoom in on this so that you can see it better, hang on, I need to go down this way a bit and across a little bit. Other than the fact that there are picots all the way around and the edging's a bit of a munge because, well, it's got nothing to hold it in place and I need to arguably press this one. Don't normally, but this one seems to want to curl up like a curly thing. You can see all these little things around the edge, but they all look like fucked up pinholes. They don't look like a beautiful decorative edge. They look wrong. They look crap. Now, some of it is because the picot looks a bit crap. Now, some of the picots do look better depending on the angle that you're looking at. So, these ones down here that look really small and manky, from the angle I'm at, the picots are all right, but that's because they're kind of tucked under. If I flip it over, and now it won't lie flat, it still doesn't show. But if I rock it, you can see that the picots are actually better, right? But, again, not entirely practical. Now, the idea, and I will use this as my demonstrative model, is that... No, not that one. I picked this up and it's the one without the pin on the end. Yeah, not very helpful, that one, Kimber. Hang on, let me put that down and grab the one with the poking device. You see, the reason I have contemplated picos is if at the end of one of these points, so let's say this is the work's this side and this is the point, I did a pico. The idea is, well, you should be able to poke this through the centre of a pico. It's not very easy at this angle, but centre of the pico, like that. And then you pass the bobbin through it to pull up a loop and make a knot on the end of it. And that should mean that it would look very, very similar to this. I mean, really, really quite similar to that. But it involves picos. So I do need to try it. Even though I hate picos, maybe on this situation, they would function, not as, be a functional pico, not a for prettiness pico. And all of that. I mean, look at this thing. It's fucking curling up as you look at it. It just doesn't like sitting flat. But it's... Clearly I'm not that good at them, so that does not necessarily mean result in good, usable picos on every end. Even though I do the same number of twists, and I believe the same action for all of them, they don't seem to work out that way. I mean, if I look at them really close up, so forgive me a second, takes off glasses and stares really closely, despite doing 5 twists a pico, very, very few of them look like more than one twist when it's finished, which is logically impossible. Now, let's go back to normal. This, of course, is awkward, but one option is the pico on the end, so that you take the thread here and go through the pico so that it acts very much like these joins, which have a pinhole in the middle. And although instead of forming a cross, they make an X in the kind of 2 loops together thing, it would be, I would like to believe, fairly invisible. The other option is to just make a V shape. So instead of where you've got here, the pair that comes down and make a straight line, you'd have a pinhole to the left and it would go round that and make kind of an empty flappy V. Now I do have one somewhere, not sure where it is, but I do have one somewhere that I did that on as an experiment as to, you know, does it all fall apart and turn. It is rather weird looking because obviously it's got no edges, but you can. And so again, you could do the pull up a loop and bobbin through it to make a knot, but around both threads, so it'll probably show a little bit more, but it would probably be easier and doesn't involve picos. Hallelujah. All right. Then there is the try and do something with needles and threads. Yeah, that's not going to be a good plan, is it? There you go, you should be back again now. Yeah, I mean, I get that a lot of it is very much like black magic, and to be honest, yeah, it is. So, I think there's a number of options with sewing needles and patience, for which I have very little. Where you try and fake being two pairs of bobbins almost. Then there is the almost inspired by crochet joins, so you put, one on one side, one on the other, and work an exceptionally thin piece, taking chunks out of either side as you go. Then there is the over sewing thing, which I swear on my life is going to show really badly, because as I said, it's going to be the thickness of 5 threads. That's got to show, right? So I have a number of ideas of how this can work, but I've no idea how practical any of them are. For I have never done this. Well, of course I've never done this. It was only a few months ago I finally learnt how to finish the bottom of a piece of lace, so, clearly joins are not my thing. Now, I know how to do the join, because when we get to the bottom of here with these pinholes, you do exactly the same thing. You lift a pin out, you poke the stick through the hole, you pull one of these threads through it. Now, normally you would pull up a loop, pass one bobbin through it, and then tie a knot on top. I don't like that because it seems to make a really big knot. So I lengthen all of these, pull one thread through, and then tie a knot. So it actually kind of has a bit of breathing room. But it's also much flatter because, well, there's only the knot, not a knot and then another knot. But it's the same way of joining. So, and if you've ever watched videos of people who do something where they maybe do a wiggly bit, and then when they come round and it's too near another wiggly bit, they join it on. It's exactly how they join the two together. So it's a very normal, common thing. So I think this, the Pico stroke the non-Pico, and obviously the non-Pico would be my preference, has quite a high potential for being an invisible join. But to do that, I arguably need to be make my strips and then make a thin strip joining the two strips together. Now, obviously, the thin strip that I make can be exceptionally thin, such as 2 pairs of bobbins. Well, technically, 2 pairs of bobbins. So they go out to the side, loop over the loops that you made in the strips, come back in, do the dance, out to the loops, out, come back in. So it literally would be, 2 pairs of bobbins. And I think that really could work quite well, because obviously you're keeping you're using pinholes, so you're keeping the tension. You're not going to gather it together accidentally and, pull on a thread if you're using a needle and discover that it's snagged up a load halfway back and now it looks like you've gathered it or something. I mean, that can be a look if you think about it. If you had scalloped bottoms by pulling the thread shorter, that could be a thing. But maybe that's not what you wanted. And it's a bit short to be doing a scalloped type bottom like that. But, if you think of the princess dresses that had the scalloped bottoms, it's a very similar kind of answer to that. Make a running stitch, zip the stuff up a bit. We could do that. But I don't really want that. I kind of want it to be flat. So, the whole using pins for distances, sizing, making sure it was all right. Hang on, got to answer a question. So I have some ideas, but if the test scripts that I need are going to be 2 weeks each, and I need 5 or 6 of them, that's one heck of a long experiment. And it's not like you can really reuse them between experiments either. Because at the end, what you really, really want to do is almost, dangle it from a big window and go, you know, how much can I see? Because sure, maybe it shows when you're sitting, you know, 3 inches away from it. Maybe it doesn't show a pace away, 2 paces away. Maybe, you know, for speed and less harassment, what sounds ugly and looks maybe ugly when you're nose to nose with it, a bit like makeup. Makeup often looks a bit ugly nose to nose, but when you take a step backwards and look at it like a human being would, well, it doesn't look so bad now. Bear in mind, I can't do makeup because all forms of foundation look like I've had an accident on me. And yes, I know how to. I know that you need to blend it in with your skin. Well, it doesn't blend, okay? It just stays sitting on top, looking at me funny. So, no matter how much I've tried rubbing, poking, brushing, stippling, and all the other frigging things that they said, I can't do makeup. I really can't. But it kind of falls into the similar situation. Is that, you know, I want to be able to give it a good representation. I want to be confident because obviously if I'm going to have to make, I don't know, 3 or 4, 5 or 6 even strips to make my net curtain, well, then I've got a lot of meterage to be joining and I need it to be successful because like all things, the last thing you really want on your mind is to make beauty and then screw it up. Now, you see, I know with these squares that the squares are going to show because they've got straight lines and the straight lines will join together and they will show. Therefore, it's almost not so bad because it's almost, well, basically, it's supposed to look like squares joined together. Now, to be honest, it's not an ideal look. It really isn't. But it's a practical one and all of that. And, you know, it is one I know I can achieve. But to push my skills and test my luck and my patience even more, I really do kind of want to do a one-piece looking one. Now, I do have a pillow that could allow me to do an entire window's worth in one piece. But the number of bobbins would see me in the funny farm before I got to the end of the first inch, right? So it's not really a solution. Hence the strips. Plus, as we all know, if you're making strips and you've got a bit of a pattern going, chances are you'll be able to go, well, I did that today. If you've got something 45 centimetres by, say, 95 centimetres, rounding it up a bit, and you do an inch in a corner. So if I did this much, which was yesterday's, in a corner. Now to start with, yeah, it'll show because, well, there was nothing. Now there's something. Great. But after a week, when you've done the equivalent of one triangle's worth in the corner, and you add this to it, it's not really going to show very much. And it's going to get worse the further you get in. When you're about halfway, you can add a sizable dinner plate's worth. And you probably won't really notice. So, doing it in one piece is not really the answer. And it's not how lace makers of old did it. They did not sit down with 80 billion bobbins trying to make it in one piece. They made strips. And they professionally joined them together. Sorry, someone just put... And that's the thing, you do need to sit, you know, if you've sat there for 3 or 4 hours poking away at it, maybe frogging a bit, cursing a bit, swearing a bit more, you want to see that you achieved something. You don't want to look at it and go, well, so how much did I actually do? Because unless you physically say count the rows of your jumper, if you add exactly, I know, one cable, well, unless you counted the cables, it's going to look like it did when you started. So yeah, I I want to do these things. I want to achieve a thing of beauty. I want to achieve. I do want to do kind of something memorable, shall we call it? Um, I want to do something memorable, and so I want to do something that I can look at and be really proud of. And as I said before, I don't really need anything of lace. I wouldn't use anything really of lace. I mean, don't get me wrong. I really like that gardeny bookmark that I did. The Bucks Point one. I really, really love that because it is a thing of beauty. But I use a Kindle. I don't generally read physical books, so you know, much as it's pretty and it's wonderful and I love it dearly, don't need it. I want something that I can do something with, and not just store it in a box somewhere. I want to actually be able to use it. And so the neck curtain is the thing, all right? So I do kind of want to do one, a good one, And tomorrow I've got a training course in the afternoon. So I expect that to be rather draining. Just because it is. It's a training course. And not one I feel overly excited to do. It's not like I'll be learning something new, let's put it that way. This cloth's really beginning to get on my nerves. Note to self, next time, remember to put it the other way up. This is the only time when these thinner bobbins really, really help. Because I end up with so many of them during doing these sections, it helps because they fit on the pillow better. But I will return to the previous bobbins for the next square. Hi, Kisser, how are you? Ooh. Nice. I love watching the ladies who do like the machine quilting, and they have like, for want of a better word, the templates that they put against they slap on their work and then sew around them. Ow, bastard! Sorry. Stabbed herself with a pin, and then chucked it somewhere, and I don't know where it went. I found the pointy end, Mummy. Ow, I'm really hurt. Just don't want it in the dog. Oh, there it is. Trying to disappear up Rory's butt, so that was just as well. Yes, it is the same pin. That really hurt. But you know the women who slap down the thing, sew around it, because they always seem to have pinpoint accuracy in their slapping, right? And yet when I look at it, if I just know that if I did that, it would never meet up. It would always look scaggy. It just wouldn't match. It would just be wrong, right? And that I'd waste an awful lot of fabric to a point where I could be able to do it with that level of confidence, you know? sometimes with pinpricks, you feel them long after they're gone. They feel like they're still there a bit. Come on. To be honest, sometimes it's not how far you have to go. All throughout my childhood, I knew that I had two cousins. Well, sorry, I have three cousins, but one I met fairly regularly every summer. So when I went to work on the farm for the summer, I would see my cousin all through the summer, the one that lived near there, and she was there kind of like every weekend, right? But the two male cousins that I had, I didn't really know where they lived. And when I asked my parents, they were like, oh, well, they live, kind of over here, kind of thing. And I went, oh, and made it sound like it was far, far away. It was only when I moved to my first house that I bought that frankly was equidistant between their houses. So 15 minutes one way would take me to my dad's house. 15 minutes the other way would take me to where my cousins lived. But I did not know where they lived. What my dad did proudly tell me was that my uncle was driving past the end of my road every day, because if you came out of my road, turn left, there was a hospital on the right, a little way up. And he worked there. It was only then that I even found out that he worked there, So it was a little bit of a surprise, frankly. If I tell you that the only times I ever saw my male cousins were at family funerals. We would travel all the way over the other side of the country for a funeral, because for whatever reason they were always the other side of the country. And then we'd travel back. We would never see them, even though they're only half an hour away. The nearest we got was when my parents gave away my violin. Don't ask. Still slightly bitter. And it was like some form of drug deal. We met on a random street somewhere. I assume it meant something. But the two boys were in one car on one side of the road. I was in the other, making faces at each other. But the parents kind of met in the middle. There was a 2-minute conversation and we left. They were half an hour away. It's not like we had to travel to another country or, Blimey, that's a lot. I have 3 cousins in total. My mother, it was complicated. My mother's parents died when she was fairly young. And it wasn't until I was a lot older that I discovered my mother had a sister. Now, in the words of my mother, her sister was a vegetable and she was deaf and blind. Well, my mother's sister allegedly was a vegetable, deaf and blind. But this didn't hold up to scrutiny. Because she was supposed to be deaf, blind and mute. So she was proper, kind of almost comatose. But not, if you know what I mean. She just was completely unaware of her surroundings and didn't have, allegedly, the mental capacity to understand any of it. I don't know whether she was older or younger than my mother. I would have to look at the family tree. I'm sure my dad found out. But on top of that, towards the funeral, because she died, and I offered to drive my mother. I didn't insist, part of a family show support for my mother, and she refused. I'd asked why we never got to visit her. Oh, well, because she swears at everybody and doesn't... Well, then she's not mute, Mother. If she can swear at people, she's not mute. Well, she doesn't always recognise people. Well, how's she recognising them? Because you always said she was blind. Well, you also said she was mute and deaf. So, how does this work, Mother? I'm not convinced there was probably anything wrong with the girl. Maybe there was literally nothing wrong with her other than maybe she just didn't like my mother. And looking back, maybe she had a point. But, my mother refused to let my father or myself take her to the funeral. Not even expecting to attend. Just to be there to support her. Absolutely refused. It was a really strange behaviour. And I guess I'll never know, is the short answer. Because obviously the poor woman's dead. To be honest, I don't even know what her name was. Well, my gran was one of 12. I think my grandfather was equally one of a large family. Her mother, my gran's mother, was one of 12 or 14 or something. But I am an only child, as is my female cousin, and the two boys are brothers. That is the entire family of my generation. Well, ish. It'll take a bit. I'm not even aware that if any of them have children. I don't think they do. But of course, here's the other thing. The boys were born to my dad's sister. The girls were born to the boys. So, as girls, we potentially lose our surname when we get married. The boys never had the surname. So I am the last now, because the others are married, of our name. Yeah, I don't know about you, Netkisser. There are times when I think having some siblings could be good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do think that there are times when having siblings is good. I also know that there are times that not having siblings are good. I think for me it's really hard because while I do have 2 cousins, 2 aunts, 2 uncles, they are the only remaining family that is alive that I'm aware of, that I've ever met, that I've ever had any real contact with. One aunt is 5 cupcakes short of a 6-pack. She is proper loopy. And my dad and my mother were always very judgmental of her for it. And she did say some real whack things, so I get it. My mother was no better. Not really. She just never got caught being that whack. My mother also said and did some really weird things. Well, I chose not to have children. And for that, I do feel sorry for my dad. Well, I did feel sorry for my dad when he was alive. Because I think my dad actually would have been quite a good granddad. He would have done that role well. I mean, he could be an annoying fart. Don't get me wrong. Hey, who can't? But you know, I think he would have liked to have been a granddad, and I never gave him that. And for that, in a way, I am slightly sorry. But on the flip side, the thing I am most sorry about is the fact that my dad was never proud of me. My dad never told me I'd done well at anything. Neither of my parents did, actually. It's not just my dad's fault. But, at the end of it, my parents were never proud of me. My parents were never happy for me. My parents, always found something wrong with everything I did. And I don't know if I'd ever want to subject children to that voluntarily, I mean, don't get me wrong. Well, my children have fur. My dad was quite happy with furry children to a large extent. Um, I don't know whether my dad was, you know, we never really discussed the children thing, particularly. I do think my dad was disappointed he never got to be a granddad, but he never came out and really said it. He never made a fuss. And so for that, I am eternally grateful. Um, it is a good thing. Sorry, I just smacked the thing with my hand. Um, so for that, I think I am grateful that he never kind of banged on about, oh, I want grandchildren, when are you having children? He never did any of that, like some parents do. When you have, the kind of, when are you having children, when are you having your children, why aren't you married yet, when are you having children, Because I know that, some places, when I got divorced from my husband, almost the first question was, well, who's the next one? Because it's getting a bit late for you to be having children. No, perhaps I don't want any, Um, gonna have to shit me home without having children. Um, so I don't know. I think I am quite glad I didn't in some ways, but I also think when it comes to old age, it is also a problem when you haven't, because then you're reliant on the state to look after you, not family, because there is no family. And that can be an issue. I mean, I don't even know if my mother knew I got married and divorced. She wasn't part of it, so. does it feel so warm in here all of a sudden? I noticed it about half an hour ago, to be honest, but it feels like it's about 25 degrees in here. What really did my phone just say that? Apparently the Amazon man's coming. Okay, whatever. I'll believe you. Which means the dogs will go nuts when he gets it. I was going to look... Oh, yeah, I know. I was going to look up the temperature. That's what I was picked up my phone for. Oh, bullshit, it's only 18. Oh, shit. There's no way it's 18 in here. My hands are actually hot to the touch, which basically means it's about 25 degrees in it. Or it's 25 degrees where I'm sitting. Either that or I'm about to die. One or the other. I'm pretty sure it's 18 degrees in it. Not 18 degrees, it's 24, 25. I mean, warm hands is nice. It's very rare I have warm hands after all. But, especially at this time of year. But, you know. Right. Oops, threw a pin at myself again. I saw a lovely short video on YouTube the other day of a woman who was clearly not overly enamoured with her birthday present, but at the same time, I'd argue it was a really thoughtful one. And she probably realised that, but at the same time had probably been hoping for something, either yarn, string, whatever, or something, you know, jewellery, day out, whatever. Her husband bought her a metal detector to find pins. And knowing how many I'm throwing around, I'm thinking, it's actually a really good idea. 5. Yeah, there we go. Well, funny you should mention that, because of course I have a pair of earth magnets. I've actually got some more somewhere, don't worry. In fact, I've got quite a few more. I have a bit of a thing for them, to be honest. I like magnets. Magnets have always intrigued me. So yeah, I have magnets for that reason. But obviously, for example, if the pin lands and kind of sticks in the carpet point down and kind of likes being there because maybe you trod on it a bit, or you've moved it and it's kind of wedged itself in there, a magnet's not always enough to pull it out. But a metal detector would tell you it is still there. So from that point of view, I like it. I'd like one. I might see how much a cheap one is. In fact, let's do that now, children. Um, out of idle curiosity. So a little handheld kind of dildo shaped one is £15. One that's a more traditional shape um, is a bit more, but a handheld pokety one. Oh no, there you go. Handheld metal security things, so a bit like a ring thing on a on a stick. That one is also £15. Um, and the really cheap one is getting reasonable reviews, more to the point. Um, I'm gonna need to quickly go to the bathroom. My body has decided to announce. So let me bring this up so I don't forget. Anyway, on the good news, Amazon man has been, and he brought me, not that it's overly apparent, but he bought me a black and a grey version of the linen. So now I've got a couple more colours to play with for that. So I complain about how long it takes to do a lace project, but I'm buying string for it like it's I've got a knitting machine, you know. I've got more balls of string than you can shake a stick at. But as we all know, we like our hoards, and well, I've got hoards of yarn, hoards of weaving yarn, and now hoards of thread. So bite me. This is why I'm single. There is no one to sit here and go, "Oh, have you really bought more of that?" Yes, I did. I also bought these. Now, it's not overly apparent what they are from that, so bear with me one moment as I open it. Hang on. They are supposed to be, so if I open it, they are little ear things that you put in. They obviously come in this little doody thing. Hang on. Look at how you get in it. There you go. They're little ear things that you plonk in your ear holes. So if I get one out, the little ear things you plonk in your ear holes. For what you probably don't know, because, well, like all of us, we don't entirely out ourselves on the internet. I live near a racecourse. And currently, it's race week. Now, I don't live that near. I mean, I used to live nearer, but I don't live that near. But I do live under the flight path. And all the rich toffs who go their way in, spending, well, a good few years ago, it was £600 per person to fly via helicopter into said racecourse, seemed to fly over my house. Now, 25 years ago, when we moved up here, I didn't really have a problem with helicopters. I mean, I'm kind of interested in how they stay up, and I also am very aware that they're one of the safest forms of flight that you can get. But when it's the only noise you hear for 6 hours, it can get to you. And over the course of the years, since where I worked was also right under the flight path, each year it has got progressively harder for me. Now, I don't have a huge issue per se with helicopters. If one flies over my house, you know, I don't instantly curl up in a ball and cry or anything. But the more of them there are, the more it gets to my soul. To the point, I can be often found during race week, rocking gently, kind of going, go away, go away, go away, go away, kind of thing in the corner. And to this end, my former employer was very kind in that they understood these issues, and it was made a note in my HR records that I was to be allowed, irrelevant of what was going on, to work from home on race week. And I did. And for a while, it really, really helped. Until one year, the holding pattern, i.e. for when there were too many helicopters in one go and they had to wait for one to clear to the land, went straight out of my house. To this end, I rang them up. I rang up the people who did the helicopters. And I spoke to them, and they were like, "Oh, well, we could, if it helps, we could invite you down, and we could." No, I don't need to go on one. That's not the problem. I don't, I don't need to inspect them. I don't need to feel that they're, well cared for, because I'm pretty sure they are. The problem is your holding pattern is right over my house. And the guy beautifully explained to me that how some people like me are really sensitive to it, and that it is the turning in one direction specifically that tends to affect people. Because of the rotor, even though it's travelling in a circle, so part of you would think it would be the same, irrelevant of which way round it's going, if it turns left or turns right, it's still going in a circle. I mean, there's still going to be down thrust, right? But apparently it thuds a lot more when turning in a direction. And he calculated, given my address, that chances were that they were turning that direction very close to my house and it was affecting me. So they arranged, that company paid for a shrink to ring me every morning of at least 2 years worth of races. For which I was very grateful. I mean, she didn't actually do anything, but she checked on me. She checked I was all right. She, gave me a few breathing exercises, checked that, how bad it was, and, generally kept an eye on me, which I was internally grateful for. So obviously, a few years ago, I moved because, my dad died. I bought a new house out in the country. I thought, it'd be a bit quieter, away from the traffic, 'cause it is beautifully quiet here. I'm on the stinking flight path. And they fly right over my house, and they fly quite low. Now, there are rules and regulations about how high they must be, and in the immortal words of an ex-co-worker who retired, they must be 250 feet. Some of these are flying real frickin' low. Now, what really cheered me up yesterday, because yesterday was first day, was that a couple of helicopters had gone over in kind of like really quick succession, and I was, twitching a little bit. And then a typhoon took off and was doing like Mach 1 as it passed my house. Even if it wasn't, it might as well have been, because it was really shifting. It was not kind of cruising, it was pedal to the metal shit. And as I explained to my ex-husband last night, it's a shame it didn't let loose any sidewinders and, take them out. And he went, but that's air to air. And I went, well, exactly. It was up in the air, What I really wanted to hear was kablooey, That would have made me laugh. That would have made my day. Now, waking up to the snow this morning, I was filled with joy because, of course, the helicopters in question do not have flight radar. They have to operate on visibility. And, well, if the visibility's shit, they can't fly. Hallelujah, right? Sadly, it cleared up, right? Now, it was still a very light helicopter day because obviously people had seen that it snowed and maybe made alternative arrangements other than the helicopters. So it wasn't too bad. But what happens is on Tuesday, it's light. On Wednesday, it's a bit heavier. On Thursday, it's quite a bit heavier. And on Friday, it's constant. It is constant from about 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon till about 7 o'clock at night. And the idea is someone actually said that those loop kind of, they're not earphones like the one I'm wearing now to listen to you guys, right? They are a noise reducing kind of thing, and they're designed mainly for people with ADHD. Now, as far as I know, don't have ADHD. I do have a few ADHD-like traits, not going to deny it, but then that's why a lot of these things are called spectrums. Anyway, I'm going to try them tomorrow. I don't know what they're like. In fact, let me grab one and stick it in my other ear and see what happens, because obviously one ear's bunged up with listening to you guys. Let's see what they're like and how hard they are to put in and out my ear holes, because, that can always be an issue. The little tiny pot's a little bit small, frankly, so let's put one in my ear. Oh, they did go in rather well. They go in quite a lot, actually. And then they tuck right in your ears. Now, as I cannot hear myself speak, I am suddenly aware that I have no idea how loud I am, and I probably got a bit louder, because that's the way not being able to hear stuff. Now, of course, it's only one ear that's blocked. The other one still has an element of hearing, so I can half hear myself, but it's only really quiet. It's a bit like swimming underwater, so I can half hear myself, but not. But they do fit very well in your ears. Yeah, that's kind of weird, that is. You see, to me, it's not the noise that bothers me of the aircraft. It's the thud, 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 thud. I can feel it. But apparently these might help. Well, they don't not help. They don't not help. Well, that's so much better now I've taken it out. They are quite comfortable, so I'm not displeased with that. They're a bit weird to put in, though, because you have to kind of shove them down your ear hole and then tuck the loop in. But I've worn worse. Not sure how good they're going to be for a whole day, though. I mean, it's one of the things I quite like about these earphones that I've got. You may have seen advertised all over the internet the ones, they keep going, oh, Apple are going to make these and they'll be banned and, all that kind of bullshit. Well, I bought a pair of those. They're 18 quid and they are the worst earphones I've ever used. They're supposed to be bone connectivity ones. No, they're not. Secondly, because that wouldn't work on me. Secondly, do you remember back in the 80s that you ever saw someone with like a Walkman on and you could always tell what they were listening to because you'd hear like... These things do the exact same. I tried them once on a recording because I was trying to work out if I could play more interesting music on stream but record with different music. And the answer is kinda. But you could hear the on-stream music in my ear. So I was listening to the music too, which was good. So I played like Eye of the Tiger and you could hear it. If you listened back to this, even though it was playing only in my ear, you could hear it. That's how easily hearable this was. And so, because I know you cannot hear the text-to-speech, you cannot hear what I'm listening to right now, which is some stream. Oh, look, a spam bot. We haven't had one of these today. Hello, idiot spam bot. Welcome to being banned. I hope you enjoy your very short period of life on Twitch. Feel free to never come again, for I will block you, ban you, and deny your message. Bye, Spambot. And then very shortly, I'll get a ting from Twitch going, we have received your report. And then a very short period later, usually, ting, we actioned your report because we thought it was a spamming bot too. So yes, I for me, it's not the sound of the aircraft particularly. However, maybe it will help just a little bit if I can't hear them coming. If I don't hear them coming quite so much, maybe I'll cut down on listening to her whininess. Because, oh look, we've received your report. And one of the things that I will say is that, now, much as it bothers me, the only time I mention anything, so I don't yell go at it, I try not to say anything, I try to just keep going and doing what I do. Amy is reacting to the helicopters. So, it's not just me. Now, sadly, I can't put those things in her ear holes, because that would be quite nice. Because then maybe she'd whine a lot less at everybody. And of course, the reason the poor Amazon man's so late is because traffic around here is a nightmare during race week. I must be, I don't know, 5-6 miles away from the race course. And I'm not on a major road. In fact, I'm far, far away kind of thing. But it still affects everyone. To the point, during race week, none of the takeout will come anywhere near here. Even though we're the opposite direction, usually from them to the racecourse. They will not come. They will not deliver food during race week. Race week's a hell week around here. Everyone gets grumpy. It's not just me. Some people react better to it in general than I do, but it's meaning they like it. And of course, in 2020, this time 5 years ago, one of the most stupid decisions ever made commercially was made, which was knowing that, on the news every day was, thousands of people, being, almost dying from COVID by the day. They decided to run the race course anyway. And 200,000 people showed up and caught COVID. And everyone around here kind of went, shocker. Well, not surprised by that one. But we'd all sat there going, what a stupid decision that is. There's big things in the news this week because the race course have upgraded their... Oh, well, of course, the problem is that, hey, but it raises so much money. Really? I need to point this out. And I mentioned this on stream the other day, right? Oh, they have actioned my report. There you go. Spambot is already dead. So, for example, they spent £10 million on upgrading a few things at the racecourse this year. They've changed the little jump things from being kind of like the twigs, kind of almost like the woven fence, but it's not woven. It's those stick fences, lots of little twigs sticking up. They've changed them from that to padded ones on the grounds that a lot of horses' feet were getting ripped apart and bruised by the plant ones. So now they're made out of plastic padding, right? Big whoop. All right. Now, I am pleased that it would hurt the horses less, but they did 10 million quid up in the grandstand and all of that. But if only 200,000 people are expected, what's that? £4,000 a person? You're expecting to make £4,000 a person to repay that? Doubt it. Bearing in mind, for race week, you have to employ extra people because they have to put on loads of catering staff, cleaning staff, this, that, the other, security, da-di-da-di-da. So it's not just 10 million, because then there's the running costs on top of that. It's just kind of like, I'm sitting there, but you can't expect to make £4,000 minimum per person to pay that back. All the residents get, lots of businesses around here go, oh, we love race week because we get all these extra people. Most of them are blind drunk pissing in bushes. I need to point this out, right? And apparently this year there is kind of like Operation whatever it's called, for trying to capture people weeing in the bushes. Because, it is an undesirable side effect kind of thing. And that's great. But, it's been happening for 25 years. It's, could have done something a little bit sooner. Secondly, they've introduced, we've done park and ride now from the junction below on the motorway. Well, hang on. So now you're going to send all of those people through even more places and interrupt more traffic by filling it with drunk idiots on buses and if they park and ride, they're probably not in a fit state to ride anything, let alone drive when they get back to it. So now, instead of being fairly, tightly compacted to, a few miles around the racecourse, well, now they've spread it like over 10, 15 miles around the racecourse. To encourage, more people to come. Well, no, all you've done is annoy even more residents. People who weren't affected by it before now are. So, for example, where my ex-husband works was the opposite side of town to the racecourse. Therefore, normally would be fine. The park and ride's like a few hundred yards from where he works. In fact, the park and ride is supposed to be where he parks. Yeah. Yeah, it's... And so, things like the Amazon men can't do their deliveries because of all the idiots on the road. It delays all their idiots. And of course, those poor Amazon guys are paid peanuts. They're paid like £1 a thing they deliver, right? Or £1 a house, or whatever it is. It is really not a lot. So, for them to get stuck in traffic, causing them to have to work late at night, because bear in mind, it's nearly 10 o'clock here, and he only came, half an hour ago or whatever. He's working late. It's dark now. There was snow this morning, so, it was dangerous driving this morning, especially with idiots about. And now, now it's dark and he's probably fed up and wants to go home. And while I get it, I don't get it. In that there are lots of people who live in their houses, except for race week, where they move out and they Airbnb their house for the week. Because it is just, sod off somewhere, make a few quid out of it, come back when it's all over. And it seems really wrong that, you live in your house, it's your house. And yet, obviously, the race course was here before a lot of the houses. So from that point of view, it's not like it's arrived since. So, pretty much everyone here will have moved in knowing that the race course was already there. Now, in fairness to my good self, we did not know the race course was there because we found when we were looking for houses, we looked around and we looked around and we looked around. And we drove all over the place, had no idea. I mean, we'd heard of the racecourse because, we'd heard of the racecourse. Hard not to. But we did not know that, it's like, for example, my old house. My old house was in Isleworth. Isleworth does not scream to you, Twickenham rugby ground. But if you stood on my front doorstep and looked slightly to the left, literally behind the houses on the other side of the road was the rugby ground. It's not in Twickenham, people. It's technically in Isleworth. But it's called Twickenham Rugby Ground. So it's not your first thought. And when we asked the people, what's this, what's that, they lied to us. Now, in hindsight, we had some, we could have taken a few actions against them because when we asked what's the other side of a fence, they said it's a park. It's a drainage works, or in more accurate terms, a sewage plant. They call it drainage works, but it's a sewage plant. Believe me, if your drains smell like that, you got problems, right? And it attracted a lot of mosquitoes and an incredible stink. So, with that in mind, we arguably could have... Because none of our surveys mentioned that there was this monstrous drainage work the other side of the fence. And because we'd been told it was a fence, we didn't think too much of it. When I bought my last house, what's the other side of the fence? Oh, it's a park. No, it's an A road. For the people in the UK who know, that's a major road. We didn't know that. Now, admittedly, like all things, you think, well, hindsight, you should have looked on a map. But if someone tells you that's what you don't go and look, because you already know. Funnily enough, I did a lot more checking when I bought this house. But things like, a race course that's miles away, you don't think about how it's going to affect you miles away, because, it's not like it's up the road from you. I mean, Twickenham Rugby Ground. The first time they had a match on, and I went to go out on the Saturday to go food shopping, because hungry and, needed some food. I've been working all week, need to go shopping. Came out my road, turned left, which, it was a bit busier. Bear in mind, I did not know that there was a match on because, I'm not exactly a rugby fan. Got to the end of my road, turned right to go towards the roundabout because I need to go to the roundabout, turn right again to go towards Sainsbury's. And a policeman went, "You can't turn right, madam." Well, I can, it's a fucking roundabout. It's for the 4. The M3's that way. I need that. No, I'm afraid you can't do that today, madam. You can only turn left. I don't want to go to Richmond. Oh, I want to go shopping. So I turned left, through a Yui, and went straight over because they were quite happy with that. But when I got back, someone was eyeing up my driveway to park in it. It's like... And it only ever got worse. It only, like everything, it got more popular, and so it got worse. And I to the point, you didn't go out on race day. You just, kind of ruled it out. Now, admittedly, there was no noise. There was no, it's not like you could hear everything. You didn't tend to have drunk yobbos, or certainly not where I was. They didn't make it as far as me. I didn't have any of that. Unlike race week, because, of course... At race week, it's an all-day event, and they start drinking from the moment they get there at like 10 o'clock in the morning. They get absolutely stoned. They get blotto out of their faces, and on either because they've won and they're celebrating, or because they're drowning their losses, right? They then kind of waddle. There's been deaths. People have, wandered down the road at stupid o'clock at night and been hit by a car and no one noticed, and they've died. We've had all of that over the years. But there is this bit of you that's kind of sitting there going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is this really the best way to make money? I mean, so many animals die every year. I haven't kept up with how many deaths there have been so far, because it's depressing. Because the answer is always more than is reasonable. Because there should be no deaths. Let's have a quick look. There we go, hang on. Hang on. So, no one's died yet this week. So, 2 days in, and nobody's been shot. That's quite a turn up. Because they always downplay the number of horse deaths at China races. Because the answer should be none. I've always found it really, really sad that you've got £1 million racehorse that, it's the pride of whatever. The jockey bullies it into jumping when it's not really ready. It trips up, falls over, so they shoot it. Oh, that's not very nice, is it? I mean, can we do the same to the jockey? As a child, I always felt that it should be fair, that there should be 2 laps. One, the jockey gets to sit on the horse and whip the crap out of it if it so desires. And round 2, the jockey has to carry the horse. That'd be far more fun. I'd rather I'll watch that, because of course horses are not light. That's right, I've got a stuck thread round a bit of string. Hang on. So yes, I've never liked horse racing, ever, and now I live near it. I'm even less. Well, it does, doesn't it? I mean, they have banned excessive whipping. They're allowed to tap them for focusing. Yeah, let me tap you for focusing with a whip. I know it's a crop, but let me hit you with that as a focusing thing. See how you like it. Um, I was a child, and I was quite a young child, but I remember this. We used to have a program called Nationwide. Now, Nationwide was a post, kind of main evening news program that had bullshit in it. It was a half-hour waster kind of thing, and they did a thing once. They had a few interesting ones over the years, but the one in question, they had a dog in a cage, and it was not a very big cage, and it was not a small dog. So realistically, the dog could only just stand there. It couldn't really lie. It probably could have laid down, but it would have been like a hot dog in a bun, right? And they had a stick, and they were doing this with it. And the dog growled and snapped at them. And my parents absolutely applauded me, because my first words out of my mouth was, well, let me put you in a cage and poke you with a stick and see how long it is before you swear at me. Because let's face it, if someone's kicking your chair, and you are not even restrained to purely only being in that chair, you can get up and walk away. You will turn around and give them a piece of your mind. And if they keep doing it, there may be threats, right? Well, imagine now you can't get away. And you've got like that little kid, almost with a pen going, Child or not, someone's going to be turned into a kebab for that. And it ain't going to be you, right? And so I and they were kind of going, look how dangerous this dog is. Look. And you're like, that dog's not dangerous. That dog's just pissed off with your shit. Don't be pretending that you're all sweet and innocent here when all you've done is sit there poking the poor thing. That is not how this should work, right? And I have a lot of sympathy for many animals in these things. It's the same with, any form of animal racing, any form of... If the horse was put in a trap, they opened the trap and the horse left under its own free will and ran round the track and got to the end and that was fine. I pretty much wouldn't have a problem with it, because the horse is not forced to leave the trap. Much like greyhound racing, not that I agree with greyhound racing, but at least they put them in a trap and, if they don't win, they tend to chuck them out on the streets, admittedly, but, there is none of this whipping, there's not, they don't put some half-starved, smallest human on these things. I'm surprised they haven't got children doing it, except for the child labour laws. With all of that in mind, I do feel for horses, because they literally get the wrong end of the stick, right? And I have a real problem with horse racing, because almost whether, if they're not willing or not, they just get hit even more. And then should they break a leg, even though they're worth, quote, millions, they kill them. Can you imagine if they did that to humans? I'm sorry, madam, you broke your leg. Say goodbye to your children. Bye. There'd be an uproar. Oh, you can't possibly do that. Well, why not? You do the same to horses. You don't bother spending money on... Now, I do appreciate that horses are difficult. Horses cannot really lie down. Not for any length of time. So you can't really dangle it in a swing or something. Keep the weight off its leg. You can put it in a pool, but you can't really do that for 6 weeks. And so it is really awkward. But if it was worth that much money to you, surely it's worth some money to try. If nothing else, put it out to stud. No, they just shoot it. And that's the problem I have, is almost for a minus, almost like a bad sprain. Oh, well, never mind. Bang, bye-bye. That's just... Can we do that with politicians, maybe? No, I didn't. Well, I did say that, but you know what I mean. It is very wrong that we do that to horses. At least with most other forms of racing, they do it so that, the animal has a level of choice. And they are not bullied into it. To be honest, most horse things are like that, though. And I don't know why, because it's usually the toffs who get into it, the people who could afford to look after them, and they don't. So yeah, I have a real issue with horsey stuff, and so I think that's part of my reason that I hate. Do you know, I've said this a few times over the years. I actually think that's part of the reason I have the problem with the helicopters. It's not really the helicopters. It's thinking of those extra money spending idiots who fly in like they think they're the big I am to watch these poor animals suffer. It's just, that one straw too many, Let's see what co-worker wanted. Hang on. Now, I'm all up for a good motor race because, well, it's an engine and the people get in the car of their own choice. And should they screw up steering it or get knocked by someone else screwing up steering it, there may be injuries and potential death, but they're more than compensated for that in their wages. And they know that, and they're fully aware of all of the risks of being involved. I'm pretty sure that those horses, although once they've done a race or two, are probably aware, that the penalty of failing to be the best in race could result in death as they watch their friends being shot. So, I have no problem with racing things in general. And even potentially betting on them should you wish to throw your money away. But I do have a problem with horse racing. It is. So it is just a violently unpleasant week for me. And Friday is the worst, by the way, because it is the biggest race day. So we shall see how that goes. One, two, three, four, five. One, two, three, four, six. Let's put it in a stick. And I think one of the biggest problems is that, like everything, the more you find out about some things, the more of a problem you can have with it. And, back to the 2020 thing, of course the reason they didn't postpone it was because they'd, already spent money on, doing things and setting stuff up and well, they didn't want to take the loss now, did they? And so they put all of those people's lives in danger. Admittedly, they all came. They could have not come, but they'd already paid for their ticket. Well, they're going to come because the chickens ain't cheap. and maybe they booked a hotel and, all that kind of stuff, well, then they're going to come, aren't they? If you're still running it, there's always the chance that some dude will make his million and... That looks a little bit weird there. I think it's just because this pin's at a slightly funnier angle. Yeah, I think... Yes. And... I mean, think of it this way. COVID is still really bad for humanity. Oh, and by the way, guess what came out last week? I haven't got it to hand. I might actually have... Was it a text message? We got an emergency mode notification because bird flu has been discovered in the local area. Do not touch any bird wildlife ever because it's full of bird flu. You're getting 200,000 people in who are going to be pissed as farts. If they see a dead bird on the ground, they'll probably pick it up and chuck it around and play catch with it. I mean, hallelujah if it, a few less idiots isn't a problem. But if we have a major issue, much like COVID, can we not? I do feel sad that we are not taking into account, because these 200,000 people that are allegedly milling around at the moment, surely you want them to have a nice time and come back next year, not kill them off. I mean, personally I'm quite up for a few less, but I don't see the point of, if for example, let's say it was 2020, I would never have made the decision to continue with Race Week, because you're inviting people to come into a close community, be shoulder to shoulder with everybody who will not be wearing masks, because masks were not enforced at this point, because it was Wednesday next week, in the equivalent of 2020, that the government made the decision that really it was a bad idea to be at work. And we all got sent home. And I very, very astutely worked out that our employer would agree. And although they had the meeting at 6 o'clock at night, I advised all of my co-workers to take home anything they may need to work from home, because if the decision is made, you will not be allowed on site to come and get it. And if you cannot do your job, you may lose your job. Because obviously if you're not working, you're not working. And you can't not work for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, which of course is all it was originally going to be. Well, of course, it didn't turn out to be 2 weeks, did it? Because, of course, originally it was 10 days and the gestation period's over. So if you all stay away from everybody for 10 days, it will pass. Logically, yes, it will. But for all the people who didn't, it did not. And then obviously, like Christmas, this was the best one. Christmas 2020 in the UK was the funniest thing ever. So, before Christmas, we were all in total lockdown. You must not visit, you must not, right? Oh, but for Christmas, you're allowed to go visit. What, COVID's going to take Christmas off? No, they let everyone visit. Oh, look, after Christmas, all the numbers went up. It really didn't take a lot of, wiseness to see some of these things coming. Ad time. See, various countries had different rulings, didn't they? And I think, and obviously different countries were hit at different times, and so there were lockdowns on travels. There was a lot of stuff going down because, of course, my employer has something to do with aeroplanes. They didn't like lockdown because it meant people weren't flying and weren't needing airplane bits, So it was deemed a very poor year. They still made a profit, by the way. Despite all their moaning and laying off over a third of the staff and globally that is, not just, in a couple of places, no, globally they laid off a third of the staff, they still managed to make a profit. So it wasn't that bad for them, now was it? See what co-worker has to say. Yeah. Yes. And that was the thing, is that lots of countries went, nope, don't need your germs, please keep out. And understandably so. I mean, I don't think any of us actually felt that they were making poor decisions there. Because obviously, no one wants to kill off their population, because who's going to pay the taxes now? The politicians can't live like kings if there's no one sitting around to pay all their wages. So, we all understand part of the reason they did it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yes, I mean, to a large extent, I don't disagree with an awful lot of what, a lot of countries did. Some of the things we did here in the UK were just ludicrous, but they weren't so bad on paper. They were a bit less practical, and a few things like the Christmas thing were just plain stupid. But in general rule, the whole of 2020 was difficult for everybody. No one had an easy time of it. And, lots of people suffered. I mean, for example, my best friend, his mother died during the COVID times. He couldn't go to the funeral because the funeral was in another country and they couldn't fly. So he didn't get to go to his mother's funeral. And I remember as he'd had to drive around and go and see various bits of family and do things, the phone calls I got, yeah, very much. I mean, his mother was not the nicest human. So from that point of view, not really a loss for humanity, and I know you would agree with me on that one. But at the same time, it was still his mother. He couldn't even go and pee on her now she was dead, kind of thing, right? Whichever is his choice. He didn't have the choice to kind of not attend out a protest. He had no choices. He couldn't go. And his family couldn't go. Nobody could go. And because his mother had demanded... Now, I need to point out, she didn't live in Ireland, but because she was not declared to have had COVID, because obviously they'd test her body could be shipped. So she got shipped to the rallies out in Ireland. But none of the Brit people could go because they weren't allowed to fly. Now, in that situation, personally, I would have held a memorial kind of service here with her present, and then had her shipped over to the rallies in Ireland, so that kind of like the next day they can do the real burial and shit, so at least everyone would have a chance to say goodbye. So I do feel very sorry for him because, I got the phone call because his mother was dying and he'd been to see her or he was allowed to visit her as long as he did the hokey cokey and a whole pile of shit. And he'd been to the hospital to sort a few things out, and he phoned me on the way back. And then he phoned me once she died because, I pretty much did the same with my dad. When my dad was dying, I was literally sitting by the bed as he was breathing his last. I'd sent him a few text messages and he'd rang me and I said, well, it's been kind of quiet. I'm sitting here talking to him, talking shit. I'm doing all right because, he's quiet. He's clearly not struggling. It's nice bad. And literally about 10 minutes later, I had to text him and say, he's gone. And we've known each other a really long time. And there is nothing we cannot say to each other in any shape or form. To the point, when I divorced my husband, I had a spare ticket for the Formula One. Now, think of how weird this sounds. I didn't have a spare bed. So, when he came to stay so that we could go, he didn't sleep on the couch because, well, the dogs would have annoyed him. We technically shared a bed. Now, there was no hanky-panky, no funny business, and there never would have even been the thought of it. But to everyone else, that is the strangest thing, because he was married. He is, well, he was and is married. And he's got 2 lovely children, and I love his family, and they love me, so it's great. But even his wife didn't think it odd, because we have known each other almost like brother and sister since we were 16 years old. And it's just never been one of those things. But if I phoned him up right here, right now, and kind of went, mate, I've got a problem, I really, really need this. If he could do something about it, he would. And similarly, if the phone rang, Liz, I've got a problem, can you help? If I had to drive down there right here, right now, I'd be driving down there right here, right now. There is no maybe about it, right? That is the kind of friendship that we have. Now, we don't speak ridiculously often. We often send stupid text messages to each other. But he is my dearest friend and I love him an awful lot. But, when he phoned me in his car and, he said someone's been cutting onions, and I went, of course they have, Pete. Of course they have. Because of course he was blubbing his heart out. But you don't like to, you don't want to announce that over the airwaves kind of thing. And, even though he couldn't stand the woman, it's still a big hole in your thing. And, I do feel very sorry for him because his mother went, and a couple of years ago now, his father went. So he, like me, no longer has parents. He does have a brother. Yeah, not the brightest thing in the world. And his brother's wife is... She's the kind of girl that in a pub quiz, what's the capital of England, would say E, right? Let's just leave it as that, right? We did do a pub quiz with her, and that's pretty much what she did. I can't remember the exact question, but she blurted out this answer. Thankfully, it was wrong, but it was that kind of, what's the capital of England? E. The fuck? Yeah. His brother and his wife got pregnant, and here is a true demonstration of the lack of brain cells between the pair of them. She got pregnant, and with a stomach the size of a small tent, they got married, hoping no one would notice. He kind of arrived an hour before she did. She gave up her job. She didn't go on maternity leave. She gave up her job. I shit you not. They claimed it would be cheaper for her and baby to be at home without a job than her working. Now, I know that childcare is not cheap, but that wasn't about childcare. This was during the pregnancy, so almost the instant she found out she was pregnant, she quit her job on the grounds to save money. They're curious people. Anyway, I'm going to call it a halt for today. Yeah, the words fail you, right? You know, sometimes you have to sit there going, "Why in the name of mercy made you think that that would work?" I do hope they never had more children than the one. Because, you know, with parents like that, it's not got a good start in life. I mean, neither of them are bad people, you know, they're not axe murderers, drug addicts, you know. There's, you know, from that point of view, there are worse people. But you're not going to learn life skills from them, are you? So, I just, you know. Anyway, let's call it a day for today. Well, yeah, even if it's just two, one in each cat, and when they get together, they maybe warm up a bit, you know. I think Rory's pooped out more brain cells than those two have between them. It's you know, it's you know, I think my lace has possibly got the same IQ. You know, it's. I mean, it's. We all know that not everyone is blessed, and that everyone has different blessings and skills in their life. Some people just have to look real freaking hard to find out what they are. And I think those two might still be looking. Bear in mind, they're older than me, so they've been looking a while now. It's not like they're 20 here, you know. I think they're still looking. Maybe they'll never find it. And that's one of the things that I think, as a brief rant before I leave, when you were at school, one of the big things that our school always told us was that you were made to do a number of subjects, whether you were interested or not, to give you an idea of what you might be interested in. Now, here, looking at things like this, one of the things that you and I have in common is we like crafting. But we didn't really do a lot of that in school. I mean, I did a bit more in primary school than I did in secondary school, but in secondary school, the only thing I ever made was a little quilted needle holder. So a couple of strips of felt. And when I say felt, I mean like this stuff, the really thin stuff, made into, you know, almost like folded over like this. Hang on. Folded over into pages and then cut, so that it's like 6 pages and folded in half. And then this sewn into a patchwork thing. So it had a patchwork covering in it. It had a handful of pages you could stick needles in, right? It's the only thing I made. Well, that's sewing though. There's no, I don't know, clothes making, knitting, crochet, macrame, you know, nothing. It's a very limited, tiny bit of hand sewing. I mean, that's it. Anyway, that was all we did. It was, you know, it was... Yeah, see ya. And as I say, it would have been nicer if school had given you far more idea of the things that you might be interested in, because so many people don't ever get to find out that maybe they would have enjoyed. I mean, for example, how many people have never tried lace making, but maybe if they tried it, they'd love it? Probably not many, but, you know, there may be lots of people who would never know because they don't know. Beadworking, all of those kind of things, embroidery, cross stitch. There's all these things that people might have enjoyed that they never got to try. Which, of course, is where, you know, I feel that we let our children down. They need to be exposed to a lot of things, but in a very small, but in a reasonable amount, because, of course, 2 minutes of it is not the same. Because when you first start, of course, you suck and you hate it. So, but, of course, as an adult, you tend to pick things up quicker anyway. But you at least need to know it's around out there. Anyway, thank you very much for being with me on my journey today. I forgot to take a photo. I'll do that in a minute. Hopefully, I will see you tomorrow. As long as race week hasn't killed me off. Take care. Bye bye.